Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, today is National Piercing Day. How are you celebrating?
I'm Tony Kornheiser. Just put a belly ring into an intern.
Oh,
not sure he wanted me
right.
to, but I did it anyway.
Oh, that's not right. I haven't even met the new intern yet. You're already doing bad things.
I got my tattoo license. I am ready to go.
Yeah, sounds like
I'm ready to ink and drink, as we say in the trade. Ready to do that. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. We will get to Johnny Manziel texting the Browns to hurry up and draft him in a moment. But we begin today with the Oklahoma City Thunder going to Los Angeles and ousting the Clippers from the playoffs. Day after day, we've been bombarded with stories about the emotional burden the Clippers have carried because of Donald Sterling's comments. Wilbon, was the result of this series about the Thunder being better than the Clippers, or the Clippers being weighed down by the distraction of the Donald Sterling mess?
Well, Tony, I spent some considerable time around the Clippers right after the Sterling drama began to unfold, and I know they were burdened by what happened. But I'm not going to say that Oklahoma City is not a better team. Oklahoma City got into a series back and forth with dramatic endings and fourth quarters and comebacks and all kinds of stuff. And Oklahoma City played better, and they played better last night in Los Angeles when a lot of us didn't think that was going to be the case. So both things can be true, but the Clippers were under greater burden the earlier series against Golden State.
That's exactly how I feel.
There was still residual effect.
That's exactly how I feel, that earlier on there may have been that burden. I believe that once they put those shirts on inside out and everybody in the world applauded, I believe that took the burden off the players. There may have been burden on Doc Rivers being asked about it all the time, but he handled that. Everything they did had been praised. And, I don't think, honestly, Chris Paul, Game 5 is the critical game in this series. Chris Paul coughed it up in Game 5. I don't think he was thinking about Donald Sterling. I think that what happened was basketball happened. And in this particular series, Mike, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were outstanding. They had 42 points last night in the second half. Those two guys alone, they were spectacular. They're better than Paul and Blake Griffin at this point in this series. They were better.
Tone, that's true. But I'm going to tell you, I know better than to say that these guys weren't burdened, because the conversations the players were still involved in, sometimes with grandparents or people very close to them, advisors, college roommates, whatever you want to say. The things that people expected from them and demanded of them that they may have wanted to see as a reaction to Donald Sterling and his bigoted comments, those things still weighed on those players. I know, because I talked to them.
Okay.
But also, you're right, that Durant and Westbrook played, and Ibaka had a couple of great games in the series.
Westbrook,
role players chipped in.
planet.
Reggie Jackson was good. So, but there's plenty of room for both things to be true.
When Westbrook goes to the basket, he is unearthly. He cannot be stopped.
Nobody
I just think if all of us believe to some degree that the sanctuary is on the court, Oklahoma City was better. Not
on the court,
by this much, but they were better.
On the court, they were just enough better to advance, Tony. They really were. If the Clippers are under duress, the man who caused it, Donald Sterling, is now in official Donald Sterling mode. He says he is not paying any of the $2.5 million fine imposed by the league, and he's hired an antitrust lawyer who has notified the NBA Sterling did nothing wrong in their opinion, and this matter, quote, will be adjudicated, close quote. Tone, should the NBA be afraid?
I'm not a lawyer, so this is not opinion that cost me $3 million and 7 years of school. But it seems to me there are two things they ought to be very afraid of. They ought to be afraid of discovery with other owners, that you can find out what other owners have said and done along the way.
That's what Sterling's hoping for.
Some of that may be horrifying to the general public. And they ought to be very afraid of the players' reaction. That if this takes some long time and the players say, you know what, I don't want to play for the Clippers or against the Clippers. So I think that time does not work on the side of the NBA, even though I think the outcome ultimately will be the same and Sterling's will be out.
Yeah, Tony, I think you might want to add divorce in there as something they could be afraid of. A protracted divorce case between the Sterlings, Shelley and Donald, who knows what that does to the sale of anything, much less the team. But, Tony, I think what the NBA should be is bold and just keep moving forward, aggressive with the Sterlings. I was here in Chicago where the Combine is yesterday and today, and the interesting thing is you've got a lot of league and club more importantly, executives, people who work directly for owners. And it's amazing to me how unanimous, and if not unanimous, I haven't polled all 29 of the teams, but just how overwhelmingly they do not want Donald Sterling
anymore. I'm sure
that's
true.
When you talk to the owners' representatives, Tony, and it's interesting, this whole notion of discovery, because I have said, wait a minute, in discovery, your boss's words could be out there too, though not on tape. But, Tony, there is still sort of a, we hate this guy now, get him out of here mentality overwhelmingly.
I think that Donald Sterling will probably find some judge somewhere that's going to grant him some injunctive relief until the whole case is heard. And if I were Adam Silver, this is exactly what I would do. I would go up to Donald Sterling and I would threaten him. I would say, I'll ruin your team. If you persist with this, I will ruin your team. You think your team's worth $1 billion? When I'm through with you and your team's going to be worth $10 million. So you better get ready. If you want to fight me, you better get ready to get this back at you. That's what I would do. Because the players are behind him now, Mike, but that will erode.
It'll erode, Tony, if they don't see that same aggression.
That's right.
Now, that is on display here in Chicago when you talk to people privately about what they feel about Donald Sterling. But you're right. That has to continue through the summer until there's a resolution.
The Indiana Pacers continued the trend in their series with the Wizards of going on the road and winning. Last night was the 5th time in 6 games that the road team won. So the Pacers justified their #1 seed behind 29 points by David West. And now we get the series we have expected since October. Wilbon, what chance do you give Indiana against Miami?
Not much. Not much, Tony. You know, the Miami Heat are not the Wizards and they're not Atlanta. You know, they're not a neophyte playoff team like the Wizards and they're not an under 500 team like Atlanta. The Miami Heat can go in and crush good teams. Not that they've had to during these playoffs for the most part. Brooklyn's a pretty good team. But Tony, I don't give them much of a chance. And much of a chance means, I guess, could it get to 6? I guess it could. That's as far as I see. I don't see a dramatic 7-game series like last year. And Indiana really struggles to play at home because when they get down on themselves, their fans get down on them. So I think we're looking at a 5-game series here probably.
I would like to give them no chance at all because I saw them against Atlanta and I saw them against Washington and I saw how dispirited and discouraged and depressed they can be when Roy Hibbert doesn't play at all. I mean, I've seen that. But I'm going to give them a little bit of a chance, and I'll tell you why. Because even at the worst of their season this year, even in March and April, they won 2 big games. They beat Miami and they beat Oklahoma City. And so I think there could be something resurrecting about Indiana now that they finally get Miami, now that they finally get that chance. I don't think that they're going to win the series, but as much as I'd like to count them completely out, I'm not going to do it. No.
Well, Tony, you know what's interesting? You mentioned those 2 games, and those 2 games are instructive for a couple of reasons. They tend to play up to opposition or down to opposition, but also, Tony, when they feel they have nothing to lose, which is the place they used to play from. When did Indiana become a threat? When they became a really difficult underdog team to play and they could threaten you. When they had expectations, they were terrible with those. But you know what? They don't have those now. They go back into the underdog role, and maybe that could make them dangerous.
They've won their last 4 road games in the playoffs. It doesn't matter who you win them against. That's pretty good. I was very disappointed last night from a Wizards point of view. Very disappointed in the lack of defense. Indiana shot over 50% and seemed to have uncontested shots throughout the whole game. You know, that was disappointing.
Tony, while we're still digesting the executive order from Jimmy Haslam, your boy, that Johnny Manziel should act like a backup.
No, he's my boy. Manziel's my boy.
Did I juxtapose it?
Yeah, Manziel's my boy.
Well, we now have news from Arkansas Sports Radio, of all places, that Johnny Football texted the Cleveland Browns quarterback's coach during the first round of the draft, quote, "Hurry up and draft me because I want to wreck this league together," close quote, he told the Brownies. Now, the quarterback's coach claims that this text got the ball rolling for the Browns to move up and draft Manziel with the 22nd pick. So, Tony, what does this tell you about your man crush, and what does it tell you about the Brownies?
Well, the first thing I would want to know is how many teams did Manziel text exactly the same words to? And if it was just Cleveland, and I'm willing to assume it was just Cleveland, and the fact that he said, let's wreck the league together, that is so far beyond cool that I mean, just, you know, shut up about guarding this kid and not exposing him to the press. Shut up about the notion that he's somehow a backup player. Roll the dice completely with him. Give him the chance to become a legend. If it doesn't work,
it's the NFL.
Okay, you tried.
You know the NFL, you like to defend the shield. They like to suppress. They suppress personality.
He's hard to
suppress energy.
He's like a bad cough in that regard. Very hard to suppress.
But you know what they're going to try to do. The Browns, knew what the Browns know what they were doing. They needed to be prompted by a text to get the ball rolling.
You can't have it both ways. You can't leak this stuff out there that makes him far more cocky than A.J. McCarron ever thought of being, that puts him in legendary status, and then say you're a backup, and then say the press is limited with you. You have to go full in with this guy.
You think the Browns leaked something?
Full in.
Tony, you're full in.
Yeah.
Football teams aren't full in until they know a guy can win some games.
They're not going to know if they don't play him.
They're not, Tony, they're going to have to play him. The point is, they're still going to spend every minute of the day, of their waking day, trying to shut this kid up until they know he can play.
I'm wearing purple here in honor of Northwestern. Why are you wearing purple?
We see that setting? That's 20 miles from Evanston. How far are you?
I don't know. 500?
686.
700? It's been widely reported that both the Pittsburgh Penguins GM, Ray Shero, and coach Dan Bilesma would be fired after the Penguins' latest playoff collapse. But only the GM got bounced. The CEO of the Penguins, David Morehouse, said, quote, "I don't think there's an element of weirdness. I think we're trying to do it systematically," unquote. But, Wilbon, don't you think this is weird?
Not really. I mean, they didn't give the coach a lifetime contract. I mean, as soon as the new person comes in to replace Shero, whoever that is, that guy can then give the axe to the coach and bring in his own coach if he wants to. Maybe he still wants possible. I don't think this is so weird. Okay, really? It's different procedurally, but you're presuming he's going to be the coach when we get to late October, Tony. I'm not presuming that.
This is, the thing about it is they have collapsed in the playoffs so often. I know they won a cup, but they've collapsed in the playoffs so often. You don't just fire the general manager. The Caps didn't just fire the general manager. You don't bring a new general manager in and put all that burden on him to make the decision on the coach. You man up, and you say, do we keep the coach or don't we? This is a Marty Schottenheimer situation. Marty was a great regular season coach. They say Bilesman is a great regular season coach, but they're concerned about his playoff coaching. The Pittsburgh Penguins assume the playoffs, Mike. So if they don't like their coach in a playoff setting, you have to get rid of him.
Okay,
they're afraid that the Capitals will go get him.
Well, I mean, Carolina and the Capitals, don't they both need coaches?
Yes.
So there could be some gamesmanship here. You make the Capitals and you make Carolina look elsewhere, even though neither one of those teams should really be a threat to Pittsburgh. I mean, if Pittsburgh is now thinking that small time from the position of Stanley Cup in 2009 to all this playoff failure having sort of clouded their thinking, I wouldn't understand either. But, Tony, once again, I don't presume he's going to be the coach come October. So I don't think this is that big a deal.
Let us take a break. But coming up, breaking news. Andrew Wiggins can jump really, really high.
Wasn't that story broken like 6 years ago when he was 12? Plus, Johnny Cueto keeps dealing. Jack Nicklaus cheats on the Lakers with the Clips. Something or Nothing is next.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The Miami Heat have won the 2013 NBA title.
Major League Baseball.
The Boston Red Sox have won the World Series.
The Bulls Championship Series.
The tide has risen again. The third time in 4 years.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
Time for the game with a self-explanatory name, Something or Nothing. Seriously, if you don't get it, go sit in timeout. Reality, what's first?
The photograph of Andrew Wiggins' vertical leap, Something or Nothing.
This is really something. If you worried about drafting Wiggins with the #1 overall thing, and you saw this, and you were one of those draft geek measurable guys, this would send you over the moon. Andrew Wiggins appears to be ready for liftoff on a launch pad of Cape Canaveral. You see that separation from the floor. Wilbon, I know you feel the same way. You think of one person, David Thompson.
David Thompson.
Yes.
We do. We're old.
Yes.
Tony, I agree with everything you just said. It's spectacular. You love it. But it doesn't mean anything. If you're going to draft this guy with the #1, 2, or 3 pick, you want to see that he can play. if he can play like David Thompson, if he can play like Dominique Wilkins, if he can play like Julius Erving to some level, or Michael Jordan to any level, then
he
you
hasn't
can get
shown
excited.
That. He has
but
not
he
shown
hasn't.
that. No.
And Tony, all praise to him. He was in a college system. He fit in that system.
Something
He's
or
got to
nothing.
learn to play.
Something or
It's
nothing.
Not yet.
Okay, I said really something. Next.
Do you believe the number there is 44 inches?
44.
For Wiggins? Do you
It
believe
could
that?
be.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
could be. That's David Thompson land up there.
Marvelous. Marv Albert ripping the Knicks. Steve
Tony's head
Kerr,
is going to
something or
explode.
nothing.
Tony's head is going to explode.
I can't say this is nothing because Marv and Steve work together, and I'm sure that, Marv's comments are absorbed greatly by Steve Kerr. But it is almost nothing in this regard. Steve Kerr's a smart guy. All right, he's done his homework. He doesn't need to hear Marv say, like he said to the Daily News, quote, there is no happiness there. Everybody hates being there. You could get 100 guys tell you that. Larry Brown could tell you that. So it's something, but it's almost nothing.
You know what? It's nothing in this regard, Tony. Steve Kerr did his due diligence. You mentioned that you started on this, I'll give you credit, back in January saying you can rip all these other owners. Dolan's the worst owner.
Yep.
And Tony, again, here in Chicago where everybody's assembled, you hear all this chatter, and much of the chatter is that Dolan was the reason. It had nothing to do with Phil. That's why I said yesterday Phil shouldn't be humiliated. He's rejecting Dolan, not Phil. And so Marv just pointing out the
Sterling
obvious.
is the worst owner.
Well,
Dolan has done the worst with his
Dolan's
team.
on deck
Yeah.
in terms of just the team, yeah.
Johnny Cueto's start to the season, something or nothing.
This is obviously something. We talked yesterday about Tanaka and how great Tanaka was, and Cueto at the moment is better, even though his record is just 4-2. His ERA is 1.25. It's the best in baseball. He's the first pitcher in 100 years to go 7+ innings in each of his first 9 starts and allowed 2 or fewer runs. He's a real pitcher. I mean, he was 9-5 a few years ago. He won 19 2 years ago, got hurt last year, and was still 5-2. This is something.
Oh, it's definitely something. When you start having stats that end in first guy in 100 years, these are real stats. These aren't just sort of made up since the merger or since Monday Night Football. This is not that. These are real numbers that are comparative throughout the history of a sport that's all about history. But he's not Tanaka. Okay? See, O is also meaningful historically. He's not an O. I don't want to hear about run support. He's not Tanaka yet, but it's something.
Next.
I was going to tell you about run support because Cueto could be 9-0 this year if he had some runs scored in a couple of starts.
Could be, but that's not the case.
Well,
Next.
then you're talking about the Reds offense. Last one, something or nothing. It's going to be Jack at the Clippers game last night.
This is nothing. And Jack Nicholson is a basketball fan. He's not turning his back on the Lakers. He wanted to go see a game. The Lakers, in case you haven't noticed, are not playing any games anymore. All right, he knows his way to the building. He goes there all the time. He sits in a seat. He has a good time. For all I know, he's putting the voodoo on the Clippers in order to get rid of them. He's not going to give up the Lakers. As long as Kobe Bryant is still playing, Jack Nicholson is courtside.
I'm going to tell you why this is a little something.
Really?
Because Laker people don't even acknowledge the Clippers. They don't even acknowledge the Clippers that they exist, much less that they play, much less that they're in the second round of the playoffs. They don't acknowledge them, Tony. I don't even know. Jack could have got in there, and Billy Crystal could have said, get out of my seat, chump. You got the other team, the one that's at the crib. So this is a little something. Just acknowledging that the Clippers live.
You have the Lakers like Big Blue Nation with Kentucky? Really? Really?
Tony, it's like Big Blue versus Louisville. You know how Kentucky people don't acknowledge Louisville? And that's what the Lakers are like with the Clippers. So for Jack to wander in the building, unless he had a shoot for a movie, it's a little something.
That's it for Something or Nothing, and it's time for a break. But on the way, the Kentucky Derby wants Wes Welker to return some of his winnings.
How can it return him and made him rain on other people? Plus, Jabari Parker's weight, again, really? And your boy Rex Ryan's prediction for the Jets this season. Uh-oh.
Jabari Parker picked up all the weight, Rex Ryan lost. At the time, people, happy 59th birthday, Jack Morris. The right-hander spent his entire 18-season career in the American League. He won 254 games. He was the MVP of the 1991 World Series. But after 15 years of eligibility for the Hall of Fame, Morris did not get in. And Morris said, quote, I'm relieved I'm tired of getting scrutinized by writers, unquote. Wilbon, are you buying that?
Well, Tony, I'm sure he hates the people who he perceives has kept him out of the Hall of Fame. I believe, and I used to be a writer, he ought to be in the Hall of Fame.
Not so happy anniversary, Nerlens Noel. On or around this day last year, the 6'10 center tipped the scales at a preposterously light 206 pounds, the NBA Combine. This year, there are reports that Jabari Parker skipped the Combine because he's 15 to 20 overweight. Wilbon, he's your boy. I suppose you think this is nothing.
Well, it's nothing when you come back to Chicago and you live where we live. You go to Lim's or Harold's like Timmy Hardaway and I did yesterday. You know, you may put on a couple.
Shout out, name drop, happy trails to $14,858 of Wes Welker's money. Remember at the Kentucky Derby when Welker was throwing around hundreds? Well, Churchill Downs says a tote error resulted in an overpayment of almost 15 large to Welker. Wilbon, do you think he should have to give it back? Because I don't.
No, it's their fault. I mean, you miscounted. Don't penalize me. Plus, when I make it rain, it's impossible to find out where the 20s and the hundreds, you know, where they went.
Trying to find out we messed up, Reality.
Just crossing the last hour, Robert Mathis, the Colts suspended the first 4 games of the season, positive for PEDs. He said what triggered the test was a male fertility drug as he and his wife seek assistance under a doctor's care, but he did not cross-check.
Big finish real quick. Rex Ryan told WFAN the teams will not want to play the Jets this year. Do you believe that?
I listen to anything Rex Ryan has to say before Labor Day. Nick Young says God came to him in a dream and gave him the nickname Swaggy P. Your thoughts?
God ever tell you to pass the ball? 55-year-old Julio Franco signed to play with an independent league team in Fort Worth. You still think he can get a hit?
Yeah, Tony. I know he spent 23 years in the bigs, but he can still hit it. California Chrome galloped fine today. Will your boy get it done tomorrow?
If he runs, he wins. Last one, Kings-Ducks, Game 7 tonight. Who you got?
Kings are 5-0 this postseason. We're facing elimination, but I got the Kings losing tone down at the pond in Anaheim.
We're out of time. Try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Have a great weekend, knuckleheads. Check out the PTI podcast on iTunes.
Darius Rucker, August 2nd.